There you go. So I think we should be all good to go. How many we got? 15 people now. Excellent. So without further ado, again, Alan, I introduced you so many times. You were one of those celebrities. This meetup is slightly different in the way that rather than talk about SAS in general, Alan will be talking about the data controller. Data controller, I guess I could say, is a baby of Alan, if there is one. And that's you come up with a concept over several years, you build it, and now it's installed in several customers, and it's you'll tell much better than me, a product that solves a particular solution. So without further ado, over to you.
Thanks. Yes. Yeah. I'd say yeah, it was my baby, but I think it's certainly grown into to something a bit more these days, because it's not a new product. It's something that's been worked on across various projects for the best part of 10 years or so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. If I can find the button. So what is the challenge? Where is it? Am I a presenter?
Should be.
Okay.
It's the green button in the middle of the screen, bottom middle of the screen.
Yeah, yeah. Great. So I'm going to go through a few slides and then I'm going to launch into actual demo. So data controller, what is it? It's a SaaS-powered web application used primarily for letting you make changes to data in SAS. So we've probably everyone in this call is familiar with SAS and the challenges of actually, updating data, because that's one of the primary things that SAS is really, really good at is data management. So how might we get data? So traditionally, when we're loading data, we might be loading data from a source system or a database. But what about all that data that exists on your laptop, those Excel files, or just data that's in your head that just needs to get into a mapping table or something like that? So the options might be that you write some SQL, you do some direct update using your SAS IDE, and the risks there are that you put a semicolon in the wrong place, you miss out a where clause, you create some data corruption, also data locks, preventing other people from using those data sets. And also, if end users have the right to modify the data model, then chances are new columns will be added, indexes will be lost, columns will be dropped. So then maybe the answer is to use a batch tool. There's lots of things like Data Integration Studio or writing code and shoving it into a batch and running it overnight, which is robust so long as the raw data doesn't change in format. But as we know, when we're getting business data, it's quite often you'll have new columns, there'll be columns missing, there'll be uppercase, lowercase, they'll be on a different sheet. And this becomes a difficult thing to defensively code against. And also the traditional approach for loading this kind of arbitrary data is to stick it on a file system where an overnight batch will pick it up, which is not so secure in that other people can see that file system. And also it's not so easy when you're working with a cloud SAS environment, because that cloud SAS environment would need access to your local shared file system. So maybe otherwise you'd use an administrator where you'd ask them to write some code, but then that administrator becomes the bottleneck. Other issues with capturing arbitrary data, and these aren't issues with SAS, these are just generic issues with capturing business data, in that you don't have that necessarily that ability to see who loaded the data and what the changes were. You've also got this huge development cost that actually somebody has to write a batch routine. That batch routine has to be tested, it has to be deployed, it has to go through a release gate, and then once it's in production, it has to be maintained. And if the source file changes, then that whole cycle continues, and there's all these artifacts that need to be maintained, like jobs and table definitions, which is necessary if you're doing a complex extract and transform. But if you're not doing the transform part, if you're just loading some data into a table, do you really need all that overhead? And that's where Data Controller comes in. So it doesn't replace existing ETL tools, it complements it and provides an alternative for simple uploads of business data into existing tables. And it does that with the full security, with SAS Logon, full transparency with the audit history, so you can see who's changing what. And the process looks a bit like this. We've got different roles. So a person who's an editor would make a change, and that change would immediately go to a back-end staging area. And then an approver could be the same person or someone different, and it could be more than one approver, needs to sign off that change. So they look at the differences and then they hit accept. And it's only at that point that the database gets updated, or dataset or CAS table. And then the auditor is the final role, and they can look at the history of who's made what change. And the major benefits are it's really fast. So if you've got some data, you need to get it into SAS, you define the table, and then you can just drag the data in or make a change directly. It eliminates the dev test promote cycle. And in that sense, it can make it 99% faster, we say, to get your data into SAS. Also, whilst doing that, you have the accuracy in terms of you have automatic data quality rules. So for instance, if there's a not null constraint, then we apply that at source. If there's a uppercase, lowercase, minimum value, max value, there's a mix of automatic rules, like for instance, the length of a column, we can get that from the model. And then you can configure additional rules and those rules will work both at front end before you send it to SAS, and then you can define additional rules at back end. So yeah, that really helps to ensure the quality of what you receive. And then of course the traceability, which is really important in a regulated environment. If you need to know who made a change and who signed it off and what the change was, and maybe if it came from Excel, do you have a copy of the original Excel that was used to make the load? And we've got a bunch of other features, a set of other features. I'm not going to go through this whole slide pack. Instead, I'm going to move on to, if I go to the website, so some things from the blog. Recent news, we've had a partnership with Notalize with SAS Now. So if you're a SAS Now customer, you can buy data controller from them. We've created a payback calculator. So if you're curious how much money you can save with data controller, you can use this calculator. Just to point out, if you need data controller for 5 users or less, then the tool is free. Just let us know if you'd like a copy. We were finalists in the SAS Innovation Award this year. So if you're wondering what SAS's perspective is on this product, we were a finalist in the award. Every so often we get a customer who really likes the product and they want more features. So they will actually invest in the product and give us more features. So I'll show you some of these when we do the demo. Yeah, this diagram is interesting. So comparing other SAS products with data controller in terms of zero code SAS loads. So the ones where data controller stands out is the one with the data model. So there's only data controller that prevents end users from making changes to the data model when updating data. Also, we have this approval mechanism and the audit history. Yeah, so you can go read about that on the site. We've also got an entire documentation site with a bunch of videos yeah, as you'd expect. So let me move on to the demo. So data controller looks like this. It's a SAS powered application. You can see in the top, this is on SAS 9. It's being driven from SAS Store Process Server. Edit is the main screen. So say I'll come in and choose a table. Oh, not a good start. What happened there? Groups. Hit edit. I can make a change to a value. I can add a new row. I can mark a row as deleted. And then I'm going to hit submit. I can see what's changed immediately in the browser. Those cells get validated. They go to the staging area. And then on the approvals screen, the approver, and I'm happen to be an approver, can see the new records, the deleted records, and then for the modified records, you can see the changes that were made. And then if I accept that, that's when the target table is updated, and we've got this history of changes. So that's the basic case. What about loading from Excel? So I've got an example here. So you can see here, I've got group name, username, group desk. When we load from Excel, we've got an OEM license for Sheet.js, which means that the parsing of the Excel happens in the browser. So what I do is, what happens when you put the Excel in, it scans every tab, and on every tab, it scans every row until it finds a row that contains all of the columns. So if I take this, this range of data here, and if I stick that on another sheet, and if I just, I don't know, just surround it with arbitrary data. So what happens is, when we find the column names, we know which row it starts on. The first column and the last column is the beginning and the end of the range. You can have extra columns in between, they just get ignored. And these can be uppercase or lowercase, or mixed case, they'll still get picked up. They can be in any order. The bottom of the table is marked by a blank row in a blank cell in a primary key column, because you can't have a blank in a primary key. So that way the JavaScript will know this is the range to pick up. So what I'll do is I'll write a little message. Hello, Saguki. So you know it's been picked up. I'll save that. And then, yeah, from the edit menu, I just need to drag my Excel in. That gets passed by the JavaScript. Should be quicker than that. Use that underscore name. Oh yeah, I don't think blanks don't count. It has to have a value. So if I just, yeah, stop that. And then try that again. There we go. Hello, Saguki. So that brought in the data, extracted the data into the table. Any validations will be applied here as well. And I've also got a copy of the Excel. And when I hit submit, that Excel file will be uploaded as well to the staging area. So, I've got my new row. I've got a change, accept that. And then on the audit history, if I download the file, download the audit zip file, and then open that up, I've got a copy of that original Excel. Here we go. So that's the Excel load. Other things, yeah, so configuring a new table in Data Controller is a case of, you say, for instance, if I had a row, you say the library, and notice here, this is one of those new features. This actually goes dynamically away and gets a list of all the available libraries. And then this next part, if I click in this cell, I've got a dynamic hook, which sends this row to SAS and brings me back just the tables for that library. And then I can choose the load type. So it could be a straight update, it could be SCD2 TX temporal, it could be bitemporal, or it could be a full replace. In all cases, we need some kind of primary key. If it's SCD2, then you need to say what the valid from, valid to field column names are, number of approvals, and that's kind of the minimum. If it's got a processed underscore DTTM, you put the name of that column here. This one doesn't. And then the hook scripts. So the hook scripts are really powerful in that they let you create workflows. So this could be a path to a SAS program, or it could also be a relative path or a full path to a stored process or via job. And what happens is this SAS code gets executed before and after a edit or before and after an approval. So for instance, after an edit, you may run some additional backend data quality. And maybe after an approval, when the database is updated, maybe you might rerun a model or resubmit a job. So that's adding a new table. And then there's also security. So security is taken from existing groups, like in Metadata or in Viya. But you can also define additional groups if you want something more granular. So yeah, the minimum to add a table is add the table here and make sure that the security is set up. So security can apply at library level or table level, and the levels can be, you can define who can edit, who can approve, who can view, and who can audit. And it's always done at group level. Validation. So this is where you'd apply some data quality. So for instance, a minimum value or a maximum value for a numeric. Hook scripts. So this is what populates the drop down, and that can be a soft select or a hard select. So a hard select, it has to be in the drop down. A soft select, it's optional and you can choose something else. Uppercase, lowercase, additional not nulls that are not in the model. Yeah, and so yeah, you just define the library table and the column and then the rule you'd like to apply. Row level security, this is another recent feature. So you can apply complex nested where clause logic to define which groups can access which tables and then which rows within the table according to these operators and column names. So yeah, this is row level security for SAS datasets or anything you can point a SAS libname at. There's a config table for additional settings. Yeah, these are the main control tables. So that's the editor, and then you've got a list of all the changes you've submitted, the changes that's available to you to approve. You've got the history, and then we've got quite a powerful viewer. So if I look in some of these tables, so one of the nice things about the DC viewer is you're not going to lock a data set by using this. And if you've got thousands of tables or libraries, which some people do, you can filter with these boxes here. So one of the things we've got is a data catalog, which is is mainly the SAS help data sets with extra stuff. So for instance, here we'll capture also the primary key field, so you can see which tables have got primary keys based on looking at the indexes. I've got a list here of all the variables. And the nice thing about running this data catalog routine with it having SED2 is that you can track changes to your data model over time. So you can see which tables are having new columns added or removed or the attributes changed. And we've got full table search as well. So if I go like a table, that'll do a back-end full search on those 17,000 rows. Alerts, you can get emails when somebody makes a change to a table. Data status, this one periodically when you run the refresh will look at the size of the libraries and the tables, so you can see you can watch them grow or maybe set alerts up on that. You can define additional emails if your emails aren't in metadata. That we've got additional config for Excel, so if you wanted to say retain the formula from an Excel range, you could do that here. And yeah, that's most of the interesting tables there. So that's the viewer. Also in the viewer, you've got a option to download not just CSV and Excel, but also SAS data lines or even DDL in different flavors, Postgres, SQL Server, SAS flavored DDL. Yeah, lineage. So if you're on SAS 9, there's also a lineage viewer. So you can, if you're using Data Integration Studio, and one of the things with Data Integration Studio, one of the best things about it is the impact analysis that shows you for every table and every column where that goes in terms of the targets or the sources. So what we've done is integrated that information from metadata into Data Controller, which means that end business users can now benefit from that lineage. So you don't need to deploy a full-on ETL tool to a business analyst just so they can see where a column came from. They can do that by clicking around here at both table and column level. And though that lineage is also linkable, so you could send somebody a link to a lineage diagram, and you can go forward or backwards. You can download as SVG, PNG, CSV, etc. There's a Metadata Explorer, so this is a bit like MetaBrowse in base SAS, which can be useful. And then there's also a SAS user navigator, which can help you see who's in what groups and roles. So that's handy if you don't have management console. This whole tool works just the same on Viya. We don't have the metadata or the lineage, but everything else is identical. And we're currently working on a version for desktop SAS as well. So if you're just working with base SAS, we'll have an option for you soon. Other things, so it's all built with the SAS.js framework, and a few things you get for free there is things like Debug Mode. So Debug Mode will capture the logs and warnings from the SAS code that's running at the back end. Yeah, any questions? I think I've covered most of the items.
Yeah, just want to say it looks really cool. Apologies if you've covered this, but I was just wondering how the platform deals with conflicting change requests.
Conflicting what requests, sorry?
Change requests. So let's say there's two requests to request to be approved.
Yes, yeah. That's a great question, because that does come up as you scale to more users. So what happens is when I make a change, I'll make a change to demonstrate, hit edit, change this one, submit. That change, I've only changed one cell there, and only that one row will get sent to the staging area, because at the front end I know. But what happens if I go to the approval screen, I generate a diff, and then somebody else has changed that particular row whilst I was looking at this screen. And what we do is when this diff is generated, we also send a timestamp of when the diff's generated. And when we hit accept, we do another check to make sure that the table's not been updated in the meantime. And if it has, then it regenerates the diff and you have to accept again. So that deals with changes being made for the same thing that you're looking at. And in terms of people making transactions at the same time, we've got a locking mechanism. So it actually works. It works here with the data set. We recommend that you use a database for the control library, and that would handle the more granular levels of locking. But we basically put a flag into this table. So whenever you're doing an upload, because an upload for SCD2 happens in two parts, you close out the records and then you append the new records. So what we do is we set the table to be locked, and then once it's completed, then it's unlocked. And in the meantime, if any other process wants to update it, the first thing they do is try and get a lock on this table.
Cool, that looks really awesome. Thanks, Alan.
Thanks, yeah. Yeah, it's been hardened through battle hardened through deployments. It doesn't use Xcommand. It works with full lockdown, works with multiple metadata repositories, Windows, Linux, all the way back to 9.3. Because yeah, all the source code is stored in the stored processes.
Hey, Alan. I had a question about the architectural requirements. So to get set up with Data Controller to install it next to SAS, what sort of setup is needed for that? So
for SAS 9, you need a stored process server. And then yeah, for Viya, it's just you need the full deployment, not the programming deployment.
Okay. So it just sits on the existing sort of Viya architecture.
Yeah,
so there's
exactly.
No additional requirement. Yeah.
Or additional requirement. It all fits as content effectively. And this is one of the nice things about building apps on SAS is you don't need to think about spinning up a server, getting through the firewall, security, data protection policy. All of those things is kind of covered already by the SAS platform. And when you build apps in SAS, you're creating some HTML, some data, some SAS code, and that just deploys as content, which is really easy to deploy because it's an existing environment there to deploy into.
Sounds great. Thanks, Alan.
Yeah, you're welcome. Just to illustrate that point a bit more, I'm going to show the video of deploying the SAS 9 version of Data Controller on a race image. So a race image is like an internal SAS virtual machine. So what I'm doing is I'm importing the SPK using Management Console. I go next. Then for the library, it's a base engine library. I put a path, and that path is also where the staging area goes. And that's deployed. And now I just run a single stored process to create the tables, and it's done. Data controller is deployed. And that's how easy it can be to deploy an app in a SaaS environment.
Hi, Alan.
Hi.
In case I missed it, I guess the tables that you could put this management layer on top of include anything that SAS has got a library to. So, Oracle and what have you.
Yeah, so we've got Oracle's we've got customers on Oracle, Postgres, Netezza, Redshift, Microsoft SQL Server, and also works on CAS tables as well as data sets, obviously.
Oh, okay, cool. So, because it's just whatever SAS 9 can get at, I'm guessing.
Yes, exactly. For big tables, we only support pass-through for
certain flavors.
Certain flavors. But if a customer's got like say saying we want to have it, we've got it from a teaser, but for another database, we can certainly build it.
Yeah, and you might get implicit pass-through going on behind the scenes anyway in some cases.
Yeah. You get the implicit pass-through anyway, but if it's got millions of rows, then it's worth building.
You can get trouble. Yeah.
Yeah.
Depends on things, shall we say.
Yeah, because what we need to do is send a temporary table to the database that contains for instance.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And you need a space to do that and what have you.
Yeah, and the syntax is slightly different, yeah.
Yeah, each bloody database has its own syntax for fields, and some SQLs are better than others, so to speak.
Yeah, and the settings you have on your libname make a big difference as well. So
indeed.
So these are all things we've got through experience of doing multiple deployments. That like if you tried to build this yourself, of course you can, but it's going to
take you a long time.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Things like numerical precision, how to deal with up to 16 parts to the right of the decimal place, about encodings, W-Latin1, UTF-8.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah.
Joy.
Yes.
Has it been deployed against, completely non-English data and circumstances, just out of interest?
Well, all of our listed customers are outside the UK.
All right. Okay, that's probably...
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, you can read some of the stories. It's on the, if you go to the blog, if I click on the Alliance one, that's Alliance Belgium. And then if I go use cases, yeah, so this shows you Siemens Healthineers, that's German, Dataristic, that's in Germany too.
Right then.
Alan, what about what's coming on Data Controller and Viya for support?
Yes, so currently the Viya for support is where we're deploying it either as a streaming app or configuring a web server. But what we'd like to do, and we're working on, is actually deploying Data Controller in a container, which should make it a bit easier to deploy. And then it will come with its own. The database will be inside the container. It'll be a Postgres database. So that's coming, and also we've had another investment. So version 3.13 will be coming out soon, and that's going to include things like I did show you on the editor about how we can run a back-end SAS process to return values that depend on other values in the same row. Now, what they want next is that we say we choose a table here. They want the drop-downs immediately here to be dependent on the value here. So we're going to add that in. So these are all little tweaks that mean that non-technical business users can more easily and more robustly update data.
That's a slightly better than non-technical.
Yeah.
Doing things like that. I mean,
True.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I would say against this is not against. That's not the right word at all. But this has gone quite far. Has it gone too far?
Yeah, we have to think carefully about the features that we accept.
Functionality wise, yeah. I mean, it's very, very, very rich, but is it? There must be a boundary at some point. But then people keep whatever people want and pay for, they can have, I guess.
But the great thing is that all the other customers benefit from the features as well.
Yeah.
And being able to put, especially when you're dealing with very large data sets. And then you might have like multiple levels of aggregation, like region, country, city, and then you just want to show the area codes for that city. This helps you do that in a browser context without much memory. It's not that you just send the data you need.
Yeah. Cool. I mean, I think the point you make about using SAS as an infrastructure, it's one that Nick Markovich has made about his App Factory stuff as well, that you're just sitting on top of something that's plumbed tons of infrastructure in for you, like authentication and all the rest of it. and that's you know, it's a huge jump start as opposed to starting from scratch. But I guess it's a bit recursive here because it is for the use of SAS, so to speak. But if you well, you could use this for anything, really, isn't it?
Well, yeah, we position it as, you know, I mean, with Viya, you get a lot of access engines, which means that this really is a very versatile tool that you could use if you've got a customer, they don't use SAS, but they've got 5 different databases. It gives you one tool you can use.
Cool. So I suppose, what's the pricing model without necessarily going into exact amounts of money? But I guess is it per named user in the system, or oh, there you go.
It's on the website. So we're quite transparent. It's free for 5 users. Above that, €500 per user per year.
Cool. And so
there's no call out. We don't see the names of those users, but internally it just tracks the number of users in.
Right. So it's a lot. There's a license key type SEPNITI type thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
To a site ID.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, I mean, it's not for mass use, I guess, because there's only certain people within your workflow should be doing this sort of thing, I guess, rather than just everybody.
Yeah, in terms of editing tables, potentially, yeah. But then we're adding more and more features also for the viewer. Which are quite handy. We've got some quite advanced filtering. The filtering is if you filter on one value, then the next value filter on is also filtered on the first.
Yeah. I did the table name filtering seemed vaguely reminiscent of bits in Viya, but then that's, you know, got more tables than you shake a stick at. You've got to be able to filter. Yeah. Cool.
I think unless anyone has any other questions, I think we're done. So
thanks all.
We have a virtual room that Allan, you're going to share the link for.
Yes. So if there's no more questions on Data Controller, of course, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain the next part of this event, which is a Miibo Room. So I don't know if anyone here has used Miibo before. It's a virtual space where you join and you can chat with other participants, almost like a real conference. So just to demonstrate how that works, I'm going to just click the button here. We're going to share the link. In fact, I'll share it now in the chat. So enable your camera and your microphone so you can talk to people. And then you need to use a Chrome browser, or it could be Edge or Brave. And then once you're in, you use your mouse to turn left and right, and then your arrow key to go forward. Like this.
Second Life beckons.
Very Second Life-y, yeah. So I would hope that all of you join, even if it's just for 5 minutes, and we can say hello in a different context.
Well, once again, Allan, thank you very much. Thank you for setting up. Thank you for the presentation. I think some people still left. I just wanted to mention that in September, we do another presentation on SAS Viya 4. And specifically, I will walk people through step by step with a live demo on the SAS Viya 4 installation on Azure Kubernetes. So if you're interested to learn about how to install Viya 4, join in September.
Okay.
And see you on the virtual island.
See you on the virtual island.
Thank you, Allan.